Now, Israel is calling up 16,000 additional reserve troops as its assault goes on. But there are now 51 IDF soldiers who are actually making a stand and refusing to take part in any more destruction. RT's Paula Sleo went to hear their stories.
In the future, I hope I can aspire to be a reasonable Palestinian after Israel no longer exists.
Eyal Rosenberg is one of a kind. The 33-year-old Israeli programmer cuts a solitary figure on the margins of Israeli society. Formerly a soldier in Israel's defense forces, he now heads a campaign for those who want to resist the draft on political grounds. But he knows his views have made him an outcast.
I'm not a true Israeli. I'm like a semi-Israeli, or I'm a bad Israeli in the eyes of the regime.
Israel is not a place for dissenters.
A recent poll in Israel found that nearly 9 out of 10 Israelis not only support their army's operation in Gaza, but want it extended. Those who criticize it are met head-on and called naive and traitors.
During a recent anti-war demonstration in the center of Tel Aviv, left-wing protesters were attacked by right-wing extremists chanting "Death to Arabs." Verbal attacks soon turned physically violent when protesters were beaten up on their way home. But there remains a small vocal minority who are not afraid to speak out, whatever the cost. Nadav Weiman, a former IDF soldier in the occupied territories, is one of them.
But it's very hard to talk about it in our society because it's very silenced. And that's why it took me, I think, about 2 years after I finished my army service. Then I decided, okay, that's it. I'm not going to be quiet anymore about what is happening over there. I have to speak.
Nadav now works for Breaking the Silence, an Israeli human rights organization which collects testimonies from former soldiers and tells their stories to the world.
We're talking about settlers' violence. We're talking about violence from soldiers towards Palestinians. We're talking about dozens of checkpoints in a very, very small area.
Only a few are brave enough to speak out against an institution that beats at the heart of Israeli society.
We have to remember that the soldiers that testify are just examples of what any other soldiers are doing, not because the soldiers are bad people. It just shows us, the Israeli public, the reality of what is going on there.
But most of the Israeli public are reluctant to hear a different point of view and are defending their country's bloody war in Gaza. Paula Sleo, RT, Tel Aviv.